Hi, everyone. Welcome to our channel. Douglas Macgregor asserts that the focus seems to be on the Middle East, particularly on paving a path towards conflict with Iran, driven by the desires of the Israeli state. He bluntly remarks that the United States lacks a coherent strategy or policy for the region and effectively acts as a tool of Israeli national interest, taking directives from them. He emphasizes a lack of interest in supporting campaigns aimed at the expulsion or killing of Palestinian Arabs in Gaza and the West Bank, actions currently initiated by Israel. Macgregor also highlights a disinterest in engaging in conflicts with Hezbollah or Iran, contrary to the narratives being presented to the American public by politicians.
The biggest issue at hand currently involves the unified support for Israel from mainstream media, the financial sector, and the government, which is being fervently advocated for. Most Americans, however, seem oblivious to this reality. While attention is rightly drawn to border concerns, particularly under the Biden administration, there's a prevailing sense of political maneuvering and compromise, which many perceive as nonsensical.
10 military actions along the border are now openly discussed, yet this should have been addressed much earlier. Recent attacks, such as the one targeting a large American base, underscore the complexities of the region. The presence of American forces, albeit approved by Jordan, but not by Syria, suggests a contentious involvement, primarily aimed at enhancing Israeli security. Despite this, Israel's energy supply, notably oil and gas, faces imminent jeopardy. The precision of recent attacks hints at deliberate strategies by entities like Iran, armed with advanced missile capabilities. The involvement of Arab militias, including Hezbollah, underscores a broader solidarity among Arabs, particularly concerning Gaza. Continued American support for Israel's policies in Gaza inevitably invites retaliation from Middle Eastern factions, as evidenced by the resilience of groups like the Houthis. The failure to understand the intracranies of the region, as demonstrated by the challenges posed by the House East, highlights the need for a reevaluation of policies regarding Israel and Gaza. Ultimately, Americans must critically examine their stance on supporting Israel's actions in Gaza to about meaningful change. The government should make it abundantly clear what we're doing. That means we've got almost 500,000 Arabs living inside the Gaza Strip that have no homes, nothing over their heads, not enough to eat, suffering from all sorts of diseases as a result of bad water, have no power. Everyone in Israel is celebrating because they want to eliminate these people. They see them, after all, as being told repeatedly as animals that deserve to be expelled. Expunge, exterminate. Interesting. Are we comfortable with that? I don't think most Americans are, but most Americans are not being told the truth. They don't really see what's happening, so we have no policy. We have no foreign policy. Our armed forces are now essentially the pawns of Israel, and whatever Israel's lobby in the United States wants. And remember, the Israeli lobby has almost complete control of everyone on the Hill, and they also control the thinking and the policymaking. But beyond that, what happens in the media, and the media crushes anyone who speaks up and says, well, perhaps this is not a good idea. Then you are branded as an anti-Semite. The ad hominem attacks begin if they can. They attack your sources of income. They try to disenfranchise you, destroy your bank accounts, and so forth. This is the way things are played right now in the United States. That's why I say this. This is not American foreign policy. This is Israeli foreign policy, and that's what's running the show. First of all, he and many others have been warning of the danger of a wider war with Iran that could rapidly become regional and end up including the Russians and the Chinese and potentially others all aligned against us. This is not news. This is a very real danger. It's also not news. As he pointed out in an article that he published in the American Conservative a week ago, there was 2 parts, one Friday and then Saturday, on the perils of American foreign policy. It goes into detail about why we militarily are not prepared for a major regional war, whether it's fought in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine, or fought in the Middle East, or anywhere else. Our stocks are way down. We are largely exhausted in many key categories, and we have no surge capacity. We can't turn to industry and say, turn out thousands of missiles and millions of munitions overnight. We don't have that capacity. If we're drawn into this thing, we will rapidly exhaust our stock. Those things are just completely ignored because the individuals you mentioned who are obviously benefiting enormously from money that comes out of the defense industry, as well as other foreign lobbies, like the Israeli lobby, they have no interest in what happens to us. What happens to the American people? Or what happens to our soldiers if they had any interest in the welfare of soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and they would have demanded to withdraw these soldiers from Iraq and Syria and everywhere else in the region a long time ago, because there are so few of them. They're in isolated places, they're easy targets. Now, what's changed recently? And this is the most dangerous aspect of the whole thing up until now, certainly since 1991. On the ground, we have never faced formidable opponents that were organized into armies, into air forces, into air defenses. We have had no naval power at all. What we faced are loosely organized, irregular militias. We call them terrorists because they support causes we don't. So you always brag and you're an opponent terrorist. You know your friends are superheroes. The men in white hats, the people you hate, are terrorists. These are not third-rate opponents anymore. Iran is a very powerful state. There are 90 million people living in that country. You're talking about a very high level of technical expertise. They have built tens of thousands of rockets and missiles. The Israelis will give you the briefings if you ask for it and tell you what very fine quality work they do, the high quality of their engineers and their capabilities. Iranians can launch enough conventional warheads on missiles to flatten most of Israel. That's what people don't seem to understand. They can target us with great precision. Just a couple of weeks ago, we watched as they killed a Mossad agent in his house, with his family, and he was in close proximity to the U.S. Embassy. US Embassy sustained no damage. Switzerland is not viewed as Switzerland. It has lost its previous neutrality, aligning with the UNATO. Mr. Erdogan appears to capitalize on opportunities, leveraging Turkey's NATO membership for influence. Despite regional tensions, including sanctions over the S-400 deal, Turkey's involvement in NATO exercises, like those with France, is perceived with skepticism. NATO's efficacy is questioned, with some arguing it's been undermined by proxy conflicts. A potential escalation coalition in Israel, particularly against Hezbollah, raises concerns as it could spiral into broader conflict involving Iran and regional Muslim sentiments against Israel, the US, and the UK. Well, first, that's the playbook. If you're a neoconservative and the neocons are driving the train, they're part of the larger globalist elite that wants to transform us into sedated sheep. They want to degrade the concept of a human being with a living soul and adopt the atheistic. The materialistic approach to dealing with people is fungible products or commodities, things that are meaningless in and of themselves that can be employed as they see fit. It's Trotskyite logic, and thinking was the origin behind the common term. We've become a 21st century version of the same thing. No, you're absolutely right. We are sowing the seeds of discord everywhere we possibly can. Can all of these come together and result in a global catastrophe? I suppose it's possible. It's never imposed. But there are a few differences that need to be noted. In 1914, when we saw the First World War break out, all of the major participants were already primed for some conflict. They all underestimated its dangers and its destructiveness. But they were all ready to pounce. They were already in the launch mode. It didn't take much to cause it. In fact, Gavrilo Princip, the man that killed the Archduke, said after it was captured, "Even if I had never been there and never shot the Archduke, eventually this war was going to happen." Well, there's some truth to that. But what you have is the slow burn today that takes months and years versus the month or so that elapsed between 28th of June to the end of July, 1234 August. In other words, everyone did not instantly pull the trigger. It took a succession of events. We'll take that the same choreography and apply it to the world. Today, we're not going to see World War. I break out this week or next week. It's going to take a few months. I think by April, May time frame, all the pieces will be in place and whoever is not involved in the region or externally will become involved. Remember, Russia is closely aligned with Iran. Russians are not going to allow Iran to be destroyed. By the way, if Turkey entered this fight, the Russians would not allow Turkey to be destroyed. The interesting,